November 17th, 2016. It's a breezy autumn day in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Tulsa, Oklahoma is the second largest city in the state of Oklahoma. It has a population of a little over 1 million people. It's a great place to live.
One of the things that I'm proud of about Tulsa is we have Black Wall Street here. Because of the attention that Black Wall Street has gotten in the past few years, we have a lot of traffic coming through Tulsa. And because it is such a growing city, you know, the crime kind of grows with it.
The growing crime rate keeps the Tulsa Police Department busy.
Police were working on a case where a man named 𝕊𝕤𝕚𝕚 had been shot in a gang-related incident.
We were investigating the shooting, and the victim at that time was not expected to live. Had multiple gunshot wounds.
What police don't know is that they are about to get a phone call that will take this case in an even darker direction.
So the Tulsa Police Department receives a tip through Crime Stoppers that there was a possible murder that had occurred that the police department was unaware of.
The caller tells police that 23-year-old Courtney Palmer had been beaten to death in an apartment.
The name is familiar to police.
We have an active case going with Courtney Palmer.
Courtney was a witness to the shooting of Carl Harris. Police had been trying to contact him for a few days to give a statement.
Courtney Palmer had been involved in other crimes, but he was not known to be a violent criminal.
The caller tells police that not only was Courtney brutally beaten to death, it gets worse.
The caller says that Courtney's body was fed to pigs.
We've had at least one more victim that has allegedly been fed to the hogs in Muskogee, and that person has never been found. So that Crime Stoppers tips definitely has some legs to it. We take it seriously at that point.
Despite Courtney being a criminal and having a long rap sheet, most of the officers were fond of Courtney.
Courtney is kind of a mainstay. Even though he's 23 years old, I knew him when he was 8 or 9. He ran the streets and I was working patrol.
Unfortunately, when Courtney was a teenager, he kind of got involved with that street life.
Courtney got roped into the wrong crowd and made friends with members of the infamous Crips gang.
Despite his criminal involvement, Courtney was well loved. He was known as a jokester. He was known for his smile, that he can light up any room that he walked in. He can lift anybody's mood if they were feeling down.
He was gang related, but it was obvious to us that Courtney cared about his family. His family cared about Courtney.
Courtney was a father to 3 children. They were the #1 priority in his life.
Courtney was a family guy. He had 2 daughters and a son. He stayed actively involved in his children's lives. The children were by 2 different women. Even though the relationships didn't last, he still stayed engaged with his children.
Courtney had a big heart. He would do anything for anybody. Just a very generous person was the impression I got about Courtney.
Everybody kind of knew Courtney Palmer. Courtney has some issues, but he was always respectful.
So who would want to kill this young father, and why? Police asked the tipster for more details.
So the anonymous tipster alerts police that Courtney was killed because there were rumors on the street that he was involved in setting up 𝕊𝕤𝕚𝕚, who was shot.
Police knew Courtney was a witness to this shooting, but this was the first time they heard he may have actually been involved.
The tipster claims a woman named 𝕊𝕤𝕚𝕚𝕚 lured Courtney to her house 2 days after Duke Harris's shooting. This isn't the first time police have heard the name 𝕊𝕤𝕚𝕚𝕚.
Allegedly, Courtney Palmer was at 𝕊𝕤𝕚𝕚𝕚's house up north. We know that house. There's other killers that have been in and around that house. So when that name comes up, it leads credence to the Crime Stoppers tip. It just starts steamrolling that. All indications is that Courtney is going to be dead.
Tulsa police officers know they need to speak with 39-year-old 𝕊𝕤𝕚𝕚𝕚 as soon as possible. They obtain a search warrant and rush to 𝕊𝕤𝕚𝕚𝕚's home, hoping the tipster was wrong.
We go up and knock and announce at the door. I was the supervisor on that warrant, so I was outside the front door.
The door slowly opens, and 𝕊𝕤𝕚𝕚 appears.
𝕊𝕤𝕚's demeanor at the time of the search warrant was initially defiant, that could not believe we were there. So what? Was what I remember her telling me. So what?
𝕊𝕤𝕚 claims she had no idea what happened to Courtney. She hasn't seen him in days.
Police execute the search warrant, looking for any signs of foul play.
The house is not in disarray to the point where you would expect if a murder had occurred, a beating like we heard. We don't find Courtney, we don't find evidence that Courtney has been killed.
But Sergeant Walker and his team don't give up that easily.
We had included our crime scene folks coming with us as part of the service of the search warrant. That doesn't always happen, but we knew we were going to need their expertise in luminolling.
With the help of the luminol, crime scene investigators are able to uncover evidence in the bathroom that was invisible to detectives' eyes.
The luminol that was in the bathroom reacted in several places. The bathtub, the bathroom sink. So that lets us know that it's not just somebody that nicked their finger and they bled a little bit and they wiped it up. It kind of is reminiscent to a beating, and that's a key part into our investigation.
There's evidence that something extremely violent happened in that room.
This has started us to believe that we've got a murder and we've got people hiding it, so it's just going to be a matter of time.
November 17th, 2016. While investigating the shooting of Carl Duke Harris, police in Tulsa, Oklahoma, have received a tip that Duke's friend, 23-year-old Courtney Palmer, has been beaten to death and fed to pigs.
Many people believed that Courtney had been involved in setting up Duke when he got shot, but police did not believe that that occurred.
The tip has led them to the home of 𝕊𝕤𝕚𝕚, where the tipster claims Courtney was killed. Though 𝕊𝕤𝕚 contends she has no idea what happened to Courtney or where he is.
Her demeanor was one that we would expect of somebody that's been talked to by law enforcement before, used to getting her way.
However, there are clear signs of a violent altercation in 𝕊𝕤𝕚's bathroom.
This was not a lot of blood, but it was a significant amount to know that what our investigation was leading us to is true. Somebody got beaten in the bathtub, on the tile, and at the bathroom sink.
As CSI documents the findings, 𝕊𝕤𝕚𝕚 is taken back to the police station for an interview.
𝕊𝕤𝕚, once she was in the interview room, finally decided that the truth was about the only thing that she could keep straight. Her lies were just not going to hold up, and that's usually the case. So when she started telling us what happened, it fit absolutely with the investigation.
Police asked 𝕊𝕤𝕚 about her relation to Courtney Palmer.
𝕊𝕤𝕚 tells police that Courtney often hung out at her house. He had a baby with her niece, and she considered him like a nephew.
𝕊𝕤𝕚 says on the night in question that there were two other people staying at her house, 39-year-old Gerald Lowe and his girlfriend.
Mac, when we interviewed her, only knew Gerald Lowe. She knew Gerald Lowe's girlfriend, but did not know her identity. And of course, when she lies about one thing, we're going to call a liar on that one too. But she was stuck with the not knowing.
𝕊𝕤𝕚 explains that Gerald, like many others in their circle, was angry about the shooting of their mutual friend, Carl Duke Harris.
Gerald believed the rumors that Courtney had something to do with Duke getting shot.
𝕊𝕤𝕚 says she doesn't think Courtney was involved, but Gerald was adamant that he was to blame.
Around 3 a.m., Courtney showed up to 𝕊𝕤𝕚's house.
She explains that Courtney just pops in, and that's totally understandable for Courtney's behavior. Courtney would show up when Courtney showed up, and he's obviously feeling a little bit triggered by the shooting of Duke, and he's talking to Mac about all that.
Charlitha tells police she had no idea the horrors that Gerald and his girlfriend had planned.
Gerald quickly got violent with Courtney. He was slapping him around, kind of pushing him around, trying to get some understanding of what happened and his involvement with Duke.
As Gerald was assaulting Courtney, he encouraged his girlfriend to get involved. Once she got involved, she took things to a whole new level.
The woman sat on Courtney's lap, straddles him, and takes out a pocket knife and slashes him on the cheek.
Charlitha says the couple used the knife to force Courtney into the bathroom, where things got even worse. Charlitha says Courtney was telling them he had nothing to do with the shooting, but they wouldn't relent. She says she was in a state of shock, too terrified of Gerald and his girlfriend to intervene.
She could hear them beating him for several hours.
She gave gruesome details as what was going on, and she allowed that to happen. I mean, it is her house. At any point, she could have called 911. It's hard to feel sorry for Mac at that point.
She confirms that Gerald's girlfriend left the residence at one point, went to the convenience store down the road to get bags of ice. When the girlfriend arrived back at the residence, Gerald forced Courtney into the bathtub where it was filled with cold water and ice, and Courtney was forced to remain in the bathtub.
They then poured boiling hot water on Courtney as well.
Finally, with a rush of adrenaline, Courtney leaps out of the bathtub and tries to fight for his life. The tussle progresses into the hallway.
When Courtney started fighting back, Gerald grabbed him and began strangling him, at which time the girlfriend began to kick Courtney in the face and chest.
So at some point, Courtney stopped moving, he stopped breathing, and it was at that point Courtney was dead.
Charlitha says that she was petrified. She watched as Gerald and his girlfriend grabbed blankets to wrap Courtney's body and loaded it into a plastic tub.
They took it out to Gerald's white pickup truck.
Gerald and his girlfriend then drive away.
Police asked Charlitha where the couple went. Was Courtney actually fed to pigs, like the Crime Stoppers tipster reported?
As for what happened with the body after that, Charlitha said Gerald told her that he got rid of the body in a rural area outside the city.
With only one name to go on for now, detectives put out an APB for their new prime suspect, Gerald Lowe, and his white pickup truck.
Gerald had a long rap sheet, which included multiple drug charges, as well as multiple offenses of assault and battery.
But who is his girlfriend and alleged co-conspirator? Detectives are about to get one step closer to finding that out.
She's walking through the store like she doesn't have a care in the world.
There's no doubt this is their girl.
Of course, all murders are tragic, but boy, the way it happened, who it happened to, is kind of tragic. Courtney Palmer is one that sticks out. You just have to say that name and we know what you're talking about. A lot of us knew Courtney Palmer from when he was a little child. Courtney was respectful to law enforcement. I mean, he was doing illegal things, but he wasn't doing them to us. So that hurts us just a little bit.
In November of 2016, detectives investigating Courtney Palmer's disappearance and possible murder have just gotten a lead on two suspects: 39-year-old Gerald Lowe and his unidentified girlfriend.
Gerald has a long history with the law, but law enforcement are still trying to figure out who his girlfriend is and where they are now.
A witness to the crime, Charlitha Mack, has told police the gruesome details that she claims led to Courtney's demise. But one detail in particular piques detectives' interest.
During Mac's interview, when she finally decided to tell us what happened inside the house, she said at some point the girlfriend went to the Quick Trip to get some ice. And that really is a key piece because at the Quick Trip they're going to have a video surveillance.
Detectives let 𝕊𝕬𝕚 go, for now, and retrieve the convenience store surveillance footage from the night of November 16th.
As they're viewing the footage from the surveillance, they see a white pickup truck pull into the lot in front of the convenience store. The same vehicle that Gerald has been known to drive.
The suspect is wearing a distinctive hooded sweatshirt with ℧ written on it. You know, and we're in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Not that ℧ is unusual, but it's not prevalent in a Big 12 state, you know, so we're not going to see a Pac-10 state come in.
The surveillance video shows the woman casually walking through the store, purchasing snacks along with 4 bags of ice. She makes the purchase and then leaves the store.
Detectives conclude this must be Gerald's mystery girlfriend, but they still don't know her name.
Once we get ℂ identified from the interviews and the information and all the surveillance video that we're gathering from the Quick Trip, everybody gets sent this information with those pictures on it. So maybe somebody knows that and will eventually call us and give us some information.
Not long after releasing the still photographs to the media, police get a tip. But it's not on the girlfriend. It's about Gerald.
The tipster says he has seen Gerald ℂ at Monica Scott's apartment. Monica just happens to be Courtney Palmer's ex-girlfriend.
Could Monica be Gerald's co-conspirator? Perhaps she started a relationship with Gerald after ending things with Courtney.
Detectives head to her apartment in hopes of getting to Gerald ℂ before he makes a run for it.
That information led us to the search warrant of Monica Scott's apartment. We knocked on the door. She answered the door.
When detectives arrive at Monica's apartment, they find her, but there is no sign of Gerald ℂ.
It's also clear Monica isn't the woman from the convenience store video.
We had talked to her, told her why we were there, and she was very cooperative at that point.
Detectives show Monica the images of the woman from the surveillance footage, and she is able to identify her right away.
Monica immediately identifies the woman as 25-year-old Michaela Riddle.
Michaela Riddle had kind of a rough life. She didn't have a very good upbringing. I think she had been abused in different ways. So she didn't have a very good life.
Michaela had difficulty holding down a steady job. That meant she had to couch surf from friend to friend's house to keep a roof over her head.
What Michaela really longed for was a man to help take care of her.
Then she met Gerald ℂ. Although he was a decade older, he was handsome and charming and had a smooth demeanor.
Unlike Michaela, Gerald had a decent upbringing, but he chose to rebel and live a life of crime.
Gerald ℂ is a very polite, very respectful young man. He used to do construction work and carpentry work, and that's how I knew him. And so I don't know that he had such a difficult background where he couldn't have done something different with his life.
Gerald was connected to the local chapter of the Crips, and he had a lengthy criminal record, but he kept Michaela safe. He made her feel comforted and protected.
The two quickly became inseparable. Gerald didn't have a home of his own, but Michaela didn't mind. She was used to the couch surfing lifestyle.
Michaela's hope was that they'd be able to lift each other up and forge a happier future together.
Even though they didn't have a house of their own, as long as they had each other, they were home.
According to Monica, Gerald and Michaela had been living with her, but she said she had not seen them in a few days.
They absconded kind of like, gypsies would do.
Monica tells police she and Courtney had a fight and broke up a few days before he disappeared. But when she heard he was missing, she was distraught.
Monica tried to reach out to him via phone, but she wasn't able to get in contact with him. She believed something terrible had happened to Courtney, and she started crying.
Michaela was at the house at the time and asked why she was upset. She admitted she was crying over Courtney.
Instead of comforting her friend, Michaela says something that chills Monica to the bone.
That's when Michaela responded, "Oh, you're never going to see him again."
When Monica asked what she meant by that, Michaela said, "This is about to be some First 48 stuff."
So that was a clear indication to Monica that her ex-boyfriend, Courtney, had been murdered.
Monica admits that she should have called the police right then and there, but she was scared and confused. She was hoping that Courtney would just come back home and everything would be back to normal.
Detectives ask Monica if she can give them any information that will help track down these potential killers.
Monica confirms to police that Gerald and Michaela do drive a white pickup truck, but she has no idea where they are now.
Then, Monica supplies them with one invaluable piece of information: Michaela's phone number.
Riddle's phone number, that's a key piece of evidence in any murder investigation. If we can get that phone number, then we can start doing work on that.
This is like gold for detectives. With this, they can track Michaela's general location.
Police are one step closer to getting justice for Courtney Palmer. Now, it's only a matter of time.
So they know that apprehending Gerald and Michaela is going to be the key to solving this case.
Of 2016, Tulsa police finally have a name for the female co-conspirator in the alleged murder of 23-year-old Courtney Palmer.
Police now believe that Gerald Lowe and Michaela Riddle are responsible for what happened to Courtney, but they still haven't found them or Courtney's body.
Now that they have Michaela's phone number, detectives hope it can lead them to where she and Gerald are hiding out.
Once Monica Scott was able to give us Michaela Riddle's phone number, we were able to get the GPS phone logs from the phone company, and then that gave us an area of town where there's several apartment complexes.
It was determined that the best course of action is for the police to just kind of slowly patrol these different apartment complexes and hotels in the hopes that they would be able to find this white pickup truck in one of the parking lots.
On December 4th, 2016, police finally find what they're looking for.
We located the white pickup, backed in, and then from there we were able to get that locked down, surrounded, surveillance set up on it. We were not going to lose the truck. Our intel person was able to locate and determine that Gerald Lowe's uncle stayed in an apartment right there where that truck was located. And then the investigation really starts to focus in on that particular area. We spend a number of hours surveillance on the truck, and then we decide to go up and knock on the door and get after Michaela Riddle and Gerald Lowe. It's kind of the most dangerous part of our investigation up to this point, because we're going to go and get two killers out of an apartment.
Prepared for the worst, police make their way to the apartment door.
We don't know what to expect. The most dangerous part was the actual confronting of Lowe and Riddle. And we decided to go in and pop the door open.
With tensions high, police enter the apartment. To their surprise, it appears empty.
Then we search an apartment for killers.
Realizing all hope is lost, Gerald Lowe comes out with his hands up.
We make voice contact with Lowe and we get him out, and Riddle is subsequently also found inside the apartment.
But Michaela is not going down without a fight.
Mostly I remember from them was Riddle's demeanor. She was just hateful and mean, and if she could hurt you, she would. So we had to be on our game to make sure we took her into custody without anybody else getting hurt or her getting hurt also. Lowe, on the other hand, was more agreeable. I think he realized that he was just going to take his chances explaining circumstances as opposed to fighting us at the apartment. Once they're in custody, it's kind of a sigh of relief.
Gerald and Michaela are placed in the squad cars while detectives scour the apartment for evidence.
It was obvious they were kind of couch surfing because their clothes were just there. They weren't hanging in the closet, so they weren't going to have a residence there. So it allows us to search the limited area, and then we're able to find the cow sweatshirt, which is key to Riddle's involvement in this case.
Satisfied with the evidence collected, authorities take the couple back to the station for questioning. Up first in the hot seat is Gerald Lowe.
Detective White goes in there and explains why he's here. He kind of understands that, yeah, we're there for a reason. He knows what he did, but he still is in denial.
When confronted with ℂ𝕤𝕚𝕚𝕝's statement about his and Michaela's involvement in Courtney's brutal murder, Gerald shuts down.
Obviously, he has the right to remain silent. He imparts that right to an attorney, and once that happens, we're kind of done. So we leave the room.
Hands tied with Gerald, detectives hope his girlfriend will be more helpful.
She's as hateful in the interrogation room as she was in the apartment. Not cooperative. She's telling us that we should all have that information. And of course we did. But usually what we want to do is start a conversation and gather some type of rapport with her. But she was unrapportable, if that's even a word.
Michaela plays dumb. She denies knowing Courtney Palmer, ℂ𝕤𝕚𝕚, and Monica Scott. The only person she claims to know besides Gerald is Carl Duke Harris, the man many believed Courtney set up to be shot.
I do remember her making some comment throughout this case that Harris was her cousin, so there's family blood, if you can believe her.
Detectives try hitting her with the hard evidence.
When shown the still photographs from the surveillance video, she denies being the person in the video.
She was not going to have any of it from us, and basically the interview was shut down, mainly because it was obvious that she wasn't going to give us anything. She wasn't going to cooperate.
She demands to be taken to her cell so that she can go to sleep.
With neither suspect cooperating, it's more important than ever that investigators find Courtney's body if they hope to get convictions.
Detectives are afraid that they may not ever be able to find the body of Courtney Palmer.
But before long, they'll get another tip that could help them do just that.
The caller says that Courtney's body was fed to pigs.
The scene was horrendous.
It was just awful, the disregard that was shown for the young man.
December 2016. Police in Tulsa, Oklahoma finally have their prime suspects in custody for the tragic disappearance and alleged murder of 23-year-old Courtney Palmer.
Investigators believe Gerald Lowe and Michaela Riddle tortured Courtney for hours and ultimately strangled him to death.
Obviously, after the arrest, we still have to locate Courtney's body. We want to put Courtney out there on the media. Here are the people that are involved. We show the truck, we show Lowe, we show Riddle.
And it doesn't take long for another tip to come in.
The next day, we get a phone call from Muskogee. So it all starts to roll downhill at that point in locating Courtney.
According to the tipster, Gerald had been seen living in an abandoned farmhouse miles away in Summit, Oklahoma.
Apparently this area used to be a pig farm, or somebody raised pigs there before. It was just kind of a desolate country area. There was a neighbor who lived next door who knew Mr. Lowe, who had said he had seen him there around the time these events were happening.
They head out to Summit in search of Courtney's remains, or the pigs who ate them.
We're able to locate the house that the caller called in after viewing our media presentation and search the premises.
Inside the dark, abandoned home, investigators scour for any sign of Courtney or evidence that might connect their perps to the scene.
They actually find a vacuum erection device and a sock. They know they can test these for DNA and hopefully tie Gerald and Michaela back to the scene.
Unfortunately, they don't find any other evidence, such as the pocket knife used against Courtney. They don't find the plastic tub that the couple supposedly used to transport the body.
In the backyard, investigators don't find any pigs, but they do find something very disturbing.
In a fire pit was the remnants of a human body.
The body was found just burned in a heap on a mattress, I believe.
The body there that was burned in the fire pit is unrecognizable to us. It's obviously a human skull. You can see that. So we know we have a body, but we know who we're looking for. At that point, I think we were confident that that's going to be Courtney's body.
The remains are sent to the lab for DNA testing. And it is confirmed that they are, in fact, Courtney Palmer's.
We were able to make notification to Courtney's family at that time. Every time we tell a family their loved one is dead, and it doesn't matter if it's a Courtney Palmer with a rap sheet or somebody that is 18 years old that doesn't have a rap sheet, the reaction is the same. The family cries, and they should, and it hurts. And that takes a little piece of us too.
Lab DNA results also come back on the sock and the vacuum erection device found inside the abandoned home. It's a match to Gerald Lowe and Michaela Riddle.
Michaela and Gerald were charged originally with assault with intent to kill because we didn't have the body, obviously. Once Courtney's body was discovered in Muskogee, we upgraded the charge to first-degree murder.
Charlitha Mack is also charged with accessory to murder.
Mack was charged with accessory to a felony, and that's, obviously because it was her house. She didn't call, she didn't intervene.
As investigators build their case for trial, they begin piecing together what led up to Courtney Palmer's gruesome homicide.
It all started on November 8th, 2016, when Carl Duke Harris was shot in an apartment complex.
Duke was Michaela's cousin. She, Duke, and Gerald were really close.
From what investigators can gather, Courtney was the one that dropped Duke off at the apartment. So that's where the rumors about Courtney being behind Duke's shooting started. Michaela and Gerald had bought into the rumors, hook, line, and sinker.
Gerald was used to meeting violence with violence.
Michaela did not have a violent criminal background like Gerald. She had never been involved in anything like this. But she trusted her man, and she agreed to go with the plan.
Michaela loved Gerald so much, she was willing to do whatever he wanted.
On the night of November 10th, Gerald and Michaela went to Charlitha Mack's house and waited for Courtney to show up.
Around 3 a.m., Courtney arrived. He was talking to Charlitha when Gerald and Michaela attacked, attempting to get him to admit to setting up Duke.
They tortured and beat him to death after he refused to admit that he was involved in the shooting of Duke Harris.
Once Courtney was dead, they loaded his body in a plastic tub and drove it out to the old farmhouse where Gerald sometimes stayed.
Investigators believe the first thing they did when they arrived was have sex on a mattress in the abandoned house.
They then went outside and set Courtney's body on fire along with the mattress they just used.
Soon, police will learn that this crime was even more senseless than they could have imagined.
Turns out Duke Harris is alive. He survived the shooting, and he is adamant Courtney had nothing to do with setting him up.
Michaela and Gerald had done all this to Courtney for nothing.
I think the main thing about this case that stood out to me was it was so heinous. I don't want to make murder sound like it's run-of-the-mill, but this wasn't a run-of-the-mill murder. I mean, the parties involved in this case went to great lengths to torture Courtney, to dispose of his body in a disrespectful way, but the torture of it, I think, was very disturbing to me. You didn't normally see crimes committed in this horrific of a manner in the Black community.
This is it. One play. This is when we find out.
Hey, quick question. Student body math proficiency. When we say it's good, fair, satisfactory? Like a percentage, if you had to guess.
Get out of here, man.
Understood.
Hey, grab it.
Great student-teacher ratio.
Marcy! We gotta go! Marcy! We have to go!
We bring you the real in-depth school info.
What were you thinking?
I don't know.
Ding dong.
Homes.com.
Welcome to Sapphire Lounge by the Club. This is more than a place to hide away before you get away. It's a main course before the main event. It's the best seat before boarding. It's a real reason to arrive early. This is what an airport lounge is supposed to be. Chase Sapphire Reserve. Make more of what's yours.
Jimmy Butler loves Hulu Plus Live TV.
It's got over 95 live channels.
But Jimmy Butler's butler is old school. He doesn't realize Hulu Plus Live TV is like cable, only better.
Buckets!
Earning a degree in the military is hard. Doing it with a family, a job, and deployments is almost impossible. But National University's 4-week courses help me balance my life and my military schedule. They don't just see you as a student, they see you as a person with a life. Now I'm a highly decorated veteran, a cyber operations chief, and most importantly, a role model to young Marines and my 2 daughters. Good job.
They say you're better safe than sorry. But they say a lot of things. In 1953, they said our whiskey recipe tasted perfectly fine, so we burned it and made something better. Maker's Mark. Make your mark.
There's nothing better than the Subway Series footlong, except when you add on an all-new footlong sidekick. We're talking a $2 footlong churro, $3 footlong pretzel, and a $5 footlong cookie. Every epic footlong deserves a perfect sidekick. Order one with your favorite Subway Series sub today.
Investigators in Tulsa, Oklahoma, are building their case against suspects Gerald Blow and Michaela Riddle. The couple is accused of torturing 23-year-old Courtney Palmer to death over an unsupported rumor.
So the rumor is that Courtney set up Carl Duke Harris to be shot on November 8th. But police have not been able to substantiate the claim that Courtney was behind it. All Courtney did was drop Duke off at the apartment where he was shot.
And soon, investigators receive stunning news that proves Courtney's murder was just as senseless as they thought.
Carl Harris did recover from the gunshot wounds. Whether it's a full recovery, I'm sure you shot 6 or 7 times. You're going to feel it for the rest of your life. But as far as I know, he's up and mobile.
With Carl Duke Harris healed enough to speak, detectives are able to ask him about the night he was shot.
Duke says he doesn't know who the shooter was, but is 100% certain that Courtney did not set him up.
Courtney was innocent all along.
You know, it was really unfortunate that his life would be cut short over a rumor. There was no evidence or proof that he was involved in the shooting of Duke.
Prosecutors make a deal with Charlitha Mack. In exchange for 2 years in prison and 18 years on parole, she agrees to testify against Gerald and Michaela in court.
And she pleads guilty to her accessory charge.
From everything that came a lot with Lowe and Riddle, this was not going to end well for them.
In December 2019, faced with the death penalty, Gerald Lowe pleads guilty to all the charges against him. Kidnapping, first-degree murder, committing a gang-related offense, and desecration of a human corpse. He is sentenced to life in prison plus 5 years.
In Gerald Lowe's case, I was the sole fact finder and sentencing authority, if you will. He didn't have the benefit of a jury. As a judge, I weigh all the facts and what his role was in the event, and in my opinion, I gave him the sentence that I thought he deserved.
In early 2020, Michaela Riddle decides to take her chances at trial.
With regard to Michaela, I think the defense strategy was to hone in on how horrible her life had been and how she would do anything to keep the love of Gerald Lowe.
Luckily for Michaela, the jury is convinced.
When the case goes to the jury, they agree that Gerald was the mastermind behind the murder and that Michaela took part in the horrific crime to make him happy.
Michaela's charges are reduced to second-degree murder, kidnapping, and desecration of a corpse. She is sentenced to 49 years in prison.
The big difference between what Miss Riddle got and what Mr. Lowe got was she went to a jury trial and she had 12 people deciding her fate. He had me.
Do I think that justice was served? Looking back at it, knowing that Michaela got 49 years, I would have liked to have seen life without parole.
Michaela will forever have to live with the guilt of taking a young father away from his family for something he didn't even do.
She was only involved in this kind of activity because she wanted to hang on to somebody who she thought loved her by doing the things that he wanted to do. Michaela wanted to please Gerald Lowe.
You have to be mindful of who you surround yourself with. You know, have your own conscience, be able to make decisions on your own. When you recognize that things are not aligned with your values, then sometimes you have to exit stage left.
Young ladies just need to know their worth. You don't need this dude to manage your life. You can manage your own life. You're intelligent, you're beautiful. You can get out and do your own thing. Once you get past that hurdle and learn to love yourself, you can do anything. You can do anything.
If home is where the heart is, what happens when that heart is filled with hate? Before you know it, the darkness can consume you, and your only chance for escape is to burn the home to the ground.
Following a tumultuous childhood, Erica Pugh is dying to break free from her parents' strict boundaries.
She just loved trouble, didn't like rules.
But when she meets the man she thinks will be her savior, he shepherds her down an unimaginable path.
Committing these crimes was the ultimate adrenaline rush.
Erica was willing to do whatever it took to keep him happy.
And later, in Hyde Park, Massachusetts, surrounded by a loving support system, young 𝕬𝕦𝕝𝕝 has the textbook foundation for success.
She was very active socially and academically, basically your average teenage girl.
But when the man of her dreams delivers her to evil, it sets off a chain of chaos and quickly derails her promising future.
It was probably one of the most gruesome homicide scenes that these cops had ever come upon.
She was looking for love, but she found the end of her life as she knew it.
There are hundreds of thousands of women in prison at any given time in the U.S. These are the true stories of women who committed heinous crimes in the name of love. For my man. Born and bred on the streets of Delmar, Maryland, Erica Pugh learns from an early age how not to be in a loving relationship.
She had a two-parent household, but in this instance, her dad was very abusive to the mom, and she watched that growing up as a child.
The first time he hit me, I was breastfeeding her. And I do believe that it did affect her very deeply.
As the chaos continues around her, the 9-year-old quickly develops into a rebellious child.
She was very defiant to anybody who tried to correct her. She just didn't like it. It was her way or no way.
Erica, pick the bag up, please.
When children act out or lash out, it's very rarely their fault.
because their brains are not fully formed, not until young adulthood. Therefore, they will lack impulse control and self-regulatory behaviors.
And the animosity only intensifies when her folks decide to call it quits.
She was thrust into a new situation with new relationships, all of which could be extremely problematic for a child that is just starting to develop their own identity and figure things out in the world.
For the next 3 years, things only get worse when her mother brings a new man into their already turbulent world.
I was laid back, cool, calm, didn't like trouble myself. So she just thought I was a bad person because she never seen a person act this way. She just didn't like me at all.
When I met Alex, she was really not very excited about that because she wanted her dad.
And when her stepdad tries to create some boundaries for his new blended household, Erica only lashes out further.
She was talking back to me, trying to make her mom look towards me as the wrong person. And I told her, I said, look, I'm not gonna steer you in the wrong way or nothing like that. I just want you to listen to me. And she didn't want to listen.
As she approaches graduation, her future takes a tumble when she falls in with the wrong crowd.
She continued to create distance between her and the rest of her family. She made friends that probably weren't the best for her.
She started not coming home, being gone for days at a time. I'd report her missing. She'd come home, and it was just a vicious cycle.
There are many things that can contribute to a good child going bad. Sometimes it may be something as simple as teenage curiosity, but quite often it may be from a tumultuous upbringing in a dysfunctional or broken home.
In fact, the girl is often spotted mingling with the degenerates who lurk around her neighborhood.
She liked smoking weed, drinking, and that's what all her friends did. And I guess that's what she wanted to do.
When Erica's mom found out that her daughter was out getting drunk and high, she tried to bring her back in. She tried to get her to change her ways, but Erica didn't listen.
We tried everything in our power to get her help, and it didn't matter to her.
Making things worse, Erica gets an unwanted gift after blowing out the candles on her 16th birthday.
She had been impregnated by a young man that she had known from hanging out on the streets, and it was not easy for her.
Unfortunately, the surprise pregnancy is not to be when she suffers a miscarriage just a few weeks in. And when the baby's daddy says he wants nothing to do with her, it sends the would-be mom into a depression.
Fine, just go.
She had reached her lowest point, and she felt that there was no one else in the world who either cared about her or was there for her.
But when she's introduced to the painkiller Percocet, it helps Erica forget her troubles.
It was definitely tough on Erica's mom. She would only see her daughter in a zombie-like state.
She just wanted to sleep all day, sit in the house, listen to music.
It was a disaster.
Erica.
In a desperate attempt to stop the out-of-control behavior, her mother calls the police.
And she had her basically put on house arrest. She did everything she could to try to bring her daughter back from this addiction problem.
They put on ankle bracelet. She calmed down for a little bit, and she would stay home pretty much.
But the second she's released 2 weeks later, the 18-year-old takes full advantage of her freedom by taking off for good.
It was 3 days and she was gone.
She knew she can always come back home, and we always let her in. But it was at a point where she didn't want to come back.
Now homeless, Erica hops from couch to couch, bunking with any friend or acquaintance who will have her, even if their hospitality comes with a sexual price tag.
When you have a teenager who is emotionally damaged or neglected, they certainly are at risk to falling in with the first person who shows them any kind of attention, even if it's a person who has really bad intentions.
Then one day, when she crosses paths with 28-year-old Ben Holterman, he instantly becomes a bright spot in her dark world.
He was handsome in her eyes, someone who's older, perhaps even wiser, that could guide her in the direction different from where she was going.
Unlike most of the men she meets, Ben is kind and caring, and as it turns out, they have a lot in common.
Both of them had kind of tough upbringings. They also both felt abandoned as kids.
Which, Ben explains, is why he's spent most of his life in hot water.
This was a guy who had just got out of federal prison for robbing banks. He had a few charges for drug activity and seemed to just drift from one place to the other.
Like Erica, Ben says he's been trying to get his life in order and immediately shows her his soft side.
Ben offered her a place to stay, helped her clothe herself, feed herself, and brought her to a place where she felt human again.
Erica jumps at the chance to bunk with Ben at his modest one-room apartment nearby, especially since he doesn't require sexual favors in return.
Ben probably treated her better than anyone had during her entire life.
But as the two broken individuals continue to bond, their newfound relationship quickly takes a toxic turn.
They were in love, but they had a world of trouble around them.
She was willing to do whatever it took to keep him happy.
Following a turbulent childhood, young Erica Pugh is struggling to make ends meet on the streets of Del-Mar, Maryland. But when a new friend, Ben Holterman, offers her a shoulder to lean on, she feels like she's been thrown a lifeline.
For a young woman who had felt abandoned and neglected and left to the side, Benjamin would have offered everything that she was looking for, including something like love.
When a person is very vulnerable, it's just human nature for them to be accepting of others. So it's not really who the person is, but it's more of the timing of the person coming into their lives.
After just a few weeks of cohabitating, the pair becomes inseparable. Because she and her man are both unemployed, Erica quickly finds out how Ben's been able to maintain his livelihood.
Ben was making money and keeping the lights on by committing petty thefts, robberies, and breaking in cars.
And when he asks for Erica's help, she doesn't think twice about supporting him or his shady habits.
Erica would have done anything for him. She didn't care. She loved him.
When we think that true love comes along, it is so much more easier to mold ourselves into that person that we think our new partner wants us to be.
After months of looting from unlocked vehicles, Erica suggests that they try their luck somewhere other than Maryland, preferably somewhere warm. A few days later, the twosome takes an online rideshare to the Sunshine State in hopes of hitting new targets and starting a new life in Orlando.
Erica and Ben were squatting, living in vacant homes which were spread out across East Orange County, and so living from place to place, they built some kind of life around petty theft, burglary.
They were just stealing just to get by. Anywhere they went or anything they seen, they wanted it, they would take it.
While Ben does most of the robberies, Erica tags along as a lookout.
She'd keep watch to see if law enforcement was coming, to see if any neighbors were attuned to what they were doing, and tried to keep Ben safe while they burglarized vehicles.
It was her job. She wanted to stand by her man, and that's what she did.
Since they never get caught, their self-assurance billows. They now have the courage to not only loot from cars, but steal the cars themselves, including a Honda Accord, which is now their main mode of transportation.
They were a very confident couple, and they weren't afraid. As long as they had each other, they were willing to do anything.
And by late winter, they have no intentions of slowing down, even when things take a dangerous turn.
In early February, Ben finds a gun, and he takes it. And a gun now has become a part of the equation.
Now that her man is armed, Erica knows the possibilities are endless.
Fear is a very interesting emotion. And it's my clinical opinion that something that might scare you, such as firearms, a gun, for example, isn't so scary when you're with someone who you really love.
With the gun in hand, the crimes start to get more serious. Ben convinces Erica to call a local drug dealer to set up a fake buy.
She does as her man says, asking for an ounce of marijuana and arranging a meetup.
Once they make contact with this drug dealer, they rob him of the drugs that he has and threaten him at gunpoint to release whatever valuable things that he had.
The pusher does as he's told, and with loot in hand, the couple quickly disappears, sure he won't out them and put his illicit livelihood in jeopardy.
Their confidence level was super high. They were going after drug dealers in a town they didn't even know. So at that point, they probably thought they were invincible.
When we look at love, there really is a chemical basis to that. We have to look at the hormones that give you that pitter-patter feeling in your heart. That sort of addiction can make you feel absolutely invulnerable.
But their bond will be tested on a balmy Wednesday evening when a routine heist spirals out of control.
On the night of February 10th, Erica and Ben head over in their Honda to one of the upper middle-class neighborhoods in East Orange County.
They were looking to break into cars and either find cash or items that they could go and sell so that they could use the money to live off of and to buy drugs.
Eventually, Ben and Erica reach Chatterley Lane, where they come across a valuable car, one that would have most certainly caught Ben's eye.
As always, loyal Erica keeps lookout, but this time, they're the ones being watched.
A homeowner spotted Ben walking around his car. He tried to go after him, but Ben got away.
That's your car.
Realizing he can't catch the snooper, the eyewitness makes a beeline for Erica.
Where do you think you're going?
For the first time, it seemed as though the couple had bit off more than they could chew.
And later, in Boston, Massachusetts, academic standout 𝕬𝕦𝕝𝕝 gets a hard lesson in love when she follows a man with no class.
It was a horrific scene, straight out of any horror movie.
She would do anything for Alex because she's in love.
Erica Pugh and her boyfriend Ben Holterman have just been spotted by a neighbor while casing vehicles in a swanky Orlando, Florida subdivision.
Ben takes off running. Meanwhile, this gentleman went over to Erica and basically slammed his hands on the car.
Where do you think you're going?
He tried to keep her from leaving the scene, but she took off.
Terrified, the teen quickly speeds through the quiet community, all the while praying her love makes it to safety.
Even though she was freaked out, her mind was still on Ben. She was thinking about her man.
Little does she know, the angry neighbor has dialed 911 with a description of the nefarious couple. And police are already hot on their heels.
She didn't have nowhere to go. She didn't know the area, and she probably was scared.
Unaware of her boyfriend's location, Erica pulls over on a side street.
She was just going up the block to get away from the police.
As she takes a breather to collect her thoughts, an unsuspecting police cruiser passes by. She immediately texts Ben a warning. With no sign of him, and police trolling the area, a nervous Erica ditches the car and sets off on foot. But not before sending one last text to prove her devotion.
Instead of taking off and not looking back, she was more concerned about what was happening to him.
After walking just a few blocks, a deputy pulls up next to her.
Mind if I have a word with you?
Erica starts to spin a web of lies. She makes up a story about how she and her boyfriend are in town to visit a relative.
While Erica nervously talks with the officer, Orange County Sheriff's Deputy Jonathan Pine is in a frantic foot pursuit with Ben. But the officer is unaware that the perp is packing heat.
Ben at one point pulls out the gun and points it at Deputy Pine and opens fire.
Shot him 3 times in the chest and 1 time in the head.
The shot is fatal, and Deputy Pine falls to the ground.
Meanwhile, Erica listens intently as the police radio begins to crackle.
This news hit Erica like a ton of bricks. She probably never imagined that going out to break in cars would escalate to this.
She is immediately transported to the police station. And the second she's placed in the interrogation room, she gets a disturbing update.
They broke the news to her that not only had her boyfriend killed the deputy, but he had also turned the gun on himself, and now he was dead.
She was devastated. And now that she was stuck with everything that they done did, and she didn't know what to do.
Crushed by the loss of her man and facing a lifetime behind bars, Erica makes a full confession.
She told him about how she was the lookout and how Ben was going around checking doors and trying to break into cars. She told him everything they wanted to know.
Erica's arrested and charged with first-degree murder, grand theft of a vehicle, and burglary. After many agonizing months in jail, Erica strikes a deal and pleads guilty to second-degree manslaughter, third-degree burglary, and third-degree grand theft auto. She's sentenced to 15 years behind bars.
Deputy Pine's wife was angry. She did not think that the plea deal, as stated, was enough time for someone who had taken away her husband and the father to her 3 children.
In the end, Erica realizes her man took the cowardly way out. She deeply regrets chasing love and wishes she never crossed paths with Ben Halterman.
Erica had so many chances to get away. Had she left Ben, had she gotten away from this unhealthy relationship, she probably could have turned things around. Now, it's too late.
This is truly a tragedy because here you have 2 people who senselessly lost their lives. The person who ends up doing time in jail didn't even pull the trigger, and she did all of this for the love of her man.
Today, she and her mom are closer than they've ever been.
She has apologized every time we talk, which is once a week. And she tells me she's sorry for what she did to me and us as a family.
Erica Pugh allowed the guy of her dreams to quickly steal her heart and her freedom. Next, 𝕬𝕦𝕝𝕝 also learns that letting a man pull you by the heartstrings can lead you to a world of trouble. At just 16 years old, 𝕬𝕦𝕝 lives the good life in bustling Boston, Massachusetts.
She was in high school. She was just about to enter her junior year. She, by all accounts, was a smart, ambitious girl who had a bright future ahead of her.
Despite being a child of divorce, the focused teen manages to stay out of trouble, thanks to an excellent role model.
Her mother came from Haiti, and she immigrated here to the United States.
Her mother was a nurse. They work hard, they work long hours. They are always there for other people. So she grows up watching this, and basically, that's her example.
And this apple has no intentions of falling far from the tree.
She wants to be a strong young woman. Her mother's in the medical field, so she goes the same direction.
She volunteered for the elderly. She worked really hard at her studies and was on track to go to college and do something with her life.
As the calendar flips, 𝕬𝕦𝕝 continues to stay on course, even when her life takes an unexpected detour the summer before her senior year.
The mother had a new job opportunity, so her and 𝕬𝕦𝕝 moved 45 minutes outside of Boston to take the job on.
When her mother said, "We're moving," 𝕬𝕦𝕝 went and threw herself into her new school. But it's an adjustment period.
A move can be especially disruptive for a teen because they have developed lifelong friendships, and then now they're ripped away from their comfort zone to be in a new environment.
The 17-year-old does her best to resume her studies, as well as her volunteer work. But when the wrong man enters her perfect world, it's 𝕬𝕦𝕝's life that will need saving.
There were 2 peas in a pod, and there's nothing that she wouldn't do for him.
17-year-old 𝕬𝕦𝕝𝕝 is excelling through life after a move from Boston to Hyde Park, Massachusetts. And when she meets her first boyfriend, she feels like she has the world on a string.
While it can be tough on teens to uproot in the middle of high school, it can also be eye-opening. It's an opportunity to come out of the comfort zone and make new friends and have new experiences.
Alexander Ghale is a star football player at nearby West Roxbury High and has all the right moves.
Instantly, 𝕬𝕦𝕝𝕝 was attracted to the way he looked, the way he talked. And so right there was an instant physical attraction.
After striking up some conversation, it's clear the pair has more in common than just sex appeal.
Their parents were both from Haiti, so they understood the whole Haitian lifestyle.
But as the discussion deepens, she learns they have one major difference. He's on the outs with his family.
His father was very strict and asked him to move to Haiti to study medicine, and that is something that Alex didn't want to do. So he eventually left, and he was just hopping on his friends' couches.
It's a story that warms 𝕬𝕦𝕝𝕝's compassionate heart, and she quickly offers a shoulder to lean on.
She wanted to support him and wanted to help him. They became boyfriend and girlfriend, and that was it for them. They were exclusive. There was nobody else.
As the season changes, the young lovers become inseparable, so much so that their 24/7 relationship concerns 𝕬𝕬𝕝's family, especially when the academic standout's grades begin to slip.
Her mother's working very, very hard, and the most that she's asking her daughter to do is to make sure she does well academically. So that means she has to focus. And having this boy, Alex, in the picture was totally veering off course.
It's that boy. You're distracted. He has nothing in
They
him.
wanted her maybe to just take a step back and cool off the relationship, but she had no interest in that.
Instead, she hopes to get her man back on his feet by boldly asking her mother if Alex can move in.
Well, his family lives in Haiti, and he doesn't have anywhere to stay. Can he please stay with us? Please?
But her mother, being pretty conservative, did not want this boy in her house.
Let's face it, most parents would absolutely not allow their 18-year-old daughter to have her boyfriend move in. And this has nothing to do about religion. It has to do with common sense.
After pleading with all of her friends, her pal Marie Tyson is the only one to concede and agrees to let him bunk on her couch for a few nights. But days quickly turn to weeks as Alex lazily settles in.
He didn't have a job, so there wasn't really much motivating him to get out of this house and find his own place. And this was where he stayed for much of the summer.
Still, the laid-back sponger claims he's in desperate need of some spending money, especially since he doesn't have his parents' support.
Alexander went to the person he knew who would help him. She was his rock, she was his girlfriend, so he's gonna hatch a plan with her to get money.
You come through tonight?
That night, Alex meets up with 𝕬𝕬𝕝𝕝, along with another friend, 21-year-old Michelle St. Jean. And together, the group formulates a scheme.
The plan was that they were going to order a pizza, and they were gonna lure the delivery man someplace where they could basically rob him, take his cash, and whatever else they could get their hands on.
At first, 𝕬𝕬𝕝𝕝 is blown away by Alex's shady plot. It's a disturbing side of him she hasn't seen in the 2 months they've been dating.
But she didn't want to back down, and she didn't want to disappoint him, so she, of course, said yes. She wanted to do it.
I really do believe that 𝕬𝕬𝕝𝕝 was probably shocked by this, but yet at the same time, when you're in love, it's just so much easier to blur those lines between right and wrong and to follow blindly.
Around 11 o'clock on a clement September evening, the friends set their robbery scheme in motion.
The trio took a bus to 742 Hyde Park Avenue.
They go to this place where they knew was vacant. Alex had crashed there a couple of times. You don't have anybody looking over your shoulder.
And the two boys were armed with knives in case anything went down.
Hoping to conceal her identity when she phones the restaurant, 𝕬𝕦𝕝𝕝 nonchalantly approaches a next-door neighbor.
I need to place an order for some pizza, but I lost my phone. Can I borrow yours?
And so she asked the neighbor if she could use this phone and order the food.
The boy happily lends his to the stranger, no questions asked. And when 𝕬𝕦𝕝𝕝 rings the local pizza joint, she makes doubly sure the driver will have plenty of cash on him.
𝕬𝕬𝕝𝕝 ordered 2 pizzas, chicken wings, and a liter of soda. And she tells them, I have a large bill and I'm gonna need change. They said, okay, no problem, we'll do this.
While she's making this phone call, Alexander and Michelle were in the house with their knives in their hands, waiting for him.
40 minutes after the initial call, 58-year-old 𝕊𝕠𝕚𝕝𝕝 pulls up to the home with the trio's order.
𝕬𝕠𝕚 wasn't even supposed to be working that night. He was taking somebody else's shift.
Little does the unsuspecting driver know, he's delivering himself to his own grave.
He could not have had any idea of what was going to happen to him in that house.
In Boston, Massachusetts, 𝕬𝕦𝕝𝕝𝕝, her boyfriend Alex Gallet, and a third friend, Michelle St. Jean, are holed up in a vacant house, ready to rob pizza delivery man 𝕊𝕠𝕚𝕝𝕝. And the second he exits his car with their order, the stage is set.
Pizza for Millie?
I left my wallet upstairs. Could you follow me out?
No, I can wait.
𝕬𝕬𝕝𝕝 urges 𝕊𝕠𝕝 to follow her around back to a second-floor entrance, where the boys are waiting anxiously to strike.
Because she was so sweet-faced and so innocent-looking, he followed her.
Even if you're not a cold-blooded person, when it comes to love, it becomes easy for someone to dispel their morals and their values.
As this was happening, the same neighbor that allowed 𝕬𝕬𝕝𝕝 to use the phone to make the order was watching the driver follow her to the back of the apartment.
Once they step foot inside, a vicious attack ensues, one that neither 𝕊𝕠𝕝 nor 𝕬𝕬𝕝 ever saw coming.
They grabbed him, they started stabbing him, and they dragged him from the back entrance through the kitchen and into a back bedroom.
They viciously stabbed him 16 times all over his body.
𝕬𝕬𝕝𝕝 was in complete shock. This was completely out of the plan that they originally had in the beginning. So just to see these two guys attack and attack and attack, it was just beyond her imagination.
Within seconds, the ambush is over, and 𝕊𝕠𝕝's lifeless body slumps to the floor. The men scramble to check his pockets for cash, finding only $143. But when Alex tries to divvy it up, his uneasy girlfriend cashes out.
𝕬𝕬𝕝𝕝 didn't want the money. It was all for her man. She didn't want to have anything to do with it.
I don't want it. Hey, what's my money is your money.
And Alex said, no, what is mine is yours. And she had no choice but to just take it anyways.
With the job done, the perpetrators collect the victim's car keys, the food they ordered, and some bleach from a closet, just in case they need to clean themselves up.
So after stealing all those things, they jetted off and ran out and took his car.
However, they have no idea they're being watched.
The neighbor heard loud sounds coming from next door and immediately saw the three come out of the house and into the pizza delivery guy's car and drive off.
He became very worried that something horrible had happened in that house.
The boy immediately rushes next door. There, he discovers 𝕊𝕠𝕝's dead body.
He went into the back room, and he was horrified by what he found on the ground. He could see blood on the walls. He saw chicken wings covered in blood.
He saw a lifeless body, his pockets inside out, and he was just lying there dead.
𝕬𝕠𝕝 was the father of 3 twin girls who were in college and an older boy who was studying mechanical engineering. It was devastating.
It's a terrifying sight, and the neighbor doesn't think twice about calling 911, providing a description of the 3 shady characters as well as their stolen getaway car.
The police right away had a lot to go on. They knew to look for a sedan that had a pizza delivery sign on it.
Police immediately put out a bolo for 𝕊𝕠𝕝's missing car and pray they can link it to whoever is responsible. Meanwhile, the assailants are en route to nearby St. Adalbert's Church parking lot to clean the car of any evidence they might have transferred into the vehicle.
They took bleach and started cleaning the steering wheel, cleaning the gear shift, cleaning the doors.
For all the care they took wiping down the car, they were very careless with the pizza. They just discarded the box, and the box had a lot of evidence, including fingerprints and blood.
Confident they've covered their tracks, the nefarious trio heads to Ymalee's friend Marie's house, where Alex has been staying.
Ymalee's friend opens the door and she sees a very bizarre scene. Her best friend, her boyfriend, and their friend look very nervous, very scared, and Alexander, his shirt and his pants are covered in blood.
That blood? We were walking down the street and...
But the pals are quick with a cover story.
Ymalee's response was that she was groped by a drunk person on the street, and the two boys went in and attacked the drunk men, and that's why they were covered with blood.
Marie is understandably suspicious, but it's late, and she's not in the mood to conduct an after-hours interrogation.
She just said, you know what, you guys go to sleep, it's not a big deal. So they just left it like that, and that was it.
It's hard to imagine how such a young couple could hold it together emotionally after committing such a heinous, violent crime. You'd really think that some sort of guilt or culpability might rear its head, but it just didn't seem to happen here.
As the trio lays low the next day, police locate Rochelle's stolen ride in the church parking lot.
They open up the doors, they have a whiff of bleach that's unbelievable. They see underneath the bottle of bleach, which has blood on it.
There was a pizza box underneath the car. There was blood on the pizza box. There were fingerprints on the pizza box.
Unfortunately, since none of their suspects have a prior record, detectives can only file them away until they're nabbed. Luckily, when they speak with one of the delivery men's co-workers the next day, it quickly turns up the heat on Ymalee's and her wingmen.
Once the police found out that information, their relationship was shattered.
Investigators in Massachusetts have just received a tip they think will lead to the killer of Rochelle Nova, a pizza delivery driver found dead in a vacant Hyde Park Avenue home.
The number that Ymalee's used to call in to make the order was different than the caller ID number.
She didn't know the telephone number of the phone she was speaking from, so she gave them Michelle's number, which appeared on the phone at the pizza company.
Hoping for answers, police immediately track down Michel St. Jean and bring him in for questioning. And without provocation, the nervous 20-year-old drops a bombshell.
He immediately confessed to being at the house, though he claimed he had not laid a finger on Rochelle.
He said that the only thing that he was involved with was stealing the keys, the money, and the car.
It's Ymalee's, and he says it's Alex, the Bonnie and Clyde, the boyfriend and the girlfriend.
Investigators ask Michel to take them where the two suspects live, and he obliges. Right before he's charged with murder, armed robbery, and breaking and entering with the intent to commit a felony. Meanwhile, Ymalee's and Alex are carrying on with life as usual.
They didn't worry about it, as if they actually believed they weren't going to be found out.
Regret is an emotion that you have which is very distressful because you've done something that is wrong or shameful, but it's hard to have regret when you have no remorse for your actions.
2 days after the murder, undercover investigators conduct surveillance around the neighborhood, where both suspects are holed up. And around 7:20 p.m., they get the opportunity to move in.
The officers saw them walking hand in hand down Adams Street, looking pretty happy by all accounts.
The teens agree to accompany police to the station, where they're questioned separately. However, the second she's placed in an interrogation room, Ymalee's continues her lying ways.
She had told them the same story she had told her friend, which was that Alexander came to her defense after she'd been groped by a man on the street, and that's how things got bloody.
But when detectives provide proof that the trio was on a bus headed for Hyde Park Avenue the night of Rochelle's murder, the once wholesome teen breaks down and reaches for a notepad.
So 𝕬𝕤𝕝 takes a piece of paper and writes down, I am invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate myself.
She had been thinking about Alex all along, and as long as she knew he was okay, she wasn't talking anymore. That helps her, and that helps him.
𝕬𝕤𝕝𝕝's immediately placed under arrest and charged with murder, armed robbery, and breaking and entering with intent to commit a felony.
It's human nature to defend someone we love till the bitter end, even if we know that what they did was wrong. It really is an action of the heart in that we're willing to look the other way.
Meanwhile, in the next room, 𝕬𝕤𝕝's man adamantly denies being involved in the murder. That is, until he learns his boo has been charged and assumes she confessed.
Once he saw she was under arrest, I think he felt that her emotions got the best of her, and she told on both of them.
But he, of course, wanted to make sure that he had 𝕬𝕤𝕝's back, but letting them know that she wasn't involved in killing Rochelle.
Instead, he provides a detailed account of he and Michelle's role in the killing.
There's something strangely noble about his behavior. He never wanted her to go to prison. He was always willing to fall on his sword for her.
But investigators don't split hairs. They remind him she was there willingly, making her just as culpable as the men.
The police knew the very active role she played by making the phone call, by being present, and then also by helping to clean up afterwards.
With that tragic news, Alex is booked and charged with murder, robbery, and breaking and entering like the other two.
Guilt is a very interesting animal. There is a subset of people who perhaps don't experience any guilt, especially when they're taking part in deplorable actions. And where they begin to express some guilt is when their backs are up against the wall.
Alexander Gsell and Michelle St. Jean decide to take their cases to trial. But it doesn't take a jury long to find both guilty of first-degree murder, armed robbery, and breaking and entering with the intent to commit a felony. They're given life sentences without the possibility of parole.
They're finished. They're done forever. All for a fistful of dollars, nothing.
4 years later, 𝕬𝕤𝕝 cuts a deal. She never testifies against her cohorts, instead pleading guilty to manslaughter, breaking and entering, and armed robbery in exchange for a 17 to 20-year sentence. Behind bars, 𝕬𝕤𝕝 expresses incredible remorse for her actions, saying she regrets throwing her promising future away for a guy like Alex.
I think like any girl, she was looking for love in a relationship, but she found her doom. She found the end of her life as she knew it.
There are a million reasons why good people go bad. And if Alex had not entered 𝕬𝕬𝕝's life, given where she was going, she could have accomplished almost anything.
She lost everything. She put him before she put herself. She put him before right and wrong, things that she knew were golden. And it is no man on this planet that should be able to make anybody do the things that
When you've been praying for love and it finally finds you, it can be utterly captivating and make you feel unshakable. But sometimes, answered prayers come with a price. You're so enchanted by him, you only listen to your heart and stop listening to your head. If he seems too good to be true, he just might be. And before you know it, you're in deep with a wolf in sheep's clothing. Saturday, July 31st, 2010. It's a beautiful morning in the college town of Beaumont, Texas.
It's a good place to live. Lamar University is a great up-and-coming university and a real draw for the area.
Lamar University is in a part of Beaumont that's predominantly surrounded by residential area.
At 7:45 a.m., a patrol officer is just making his rounds through campus when he hears an unexpected sound. Gunshots.
Seconds after he hears the sounds of gunshots, he sees a panicked man running towards him.
The officer pulled over and asked him what was going on.
The man identifies himself as Ronald Woods.
He says his fiance and her daughter are in grave danger and that he needs help.
Ronald says a man opened fire on him and his family in their home, and they all scattered.
The officer at that point told Ronald to get in the car. He called for backup and they sped to the house.
The home is less than a block away, and it doesn't take long for additional officers to arrive.
Police come out of nowhere. It's a dangerous situation. They got their guns drawn.
They don't know what's going on. They don't know if there are live victims on the scene.
As one officer stays with Ronald, the other officers make their way inside the home. And they immediately make a tragic discovery.
Officers identified one victim on the floor. She has a wound to the upper body, and she's also shot in the head. It appears to be execution style.
Officers check the victim's vitals, but it's clear they're too late.
She was pronounced dead on the scene.
As the officers begin to clear the rest of the home, they notice the back door is wide open. Once outside, police are met with another heartbreaking sight.
They found a teenage girl.
She was deceased as well. She had a gunshot wound to the head.
A mother and daughter dead, both shot execution style. But who could have done this? As detectives dig into the case, they'll uncover a dangerous man out for revenge and a good girl willing to go to great lengths to keep him from being caught. Single mother Ebony Andrews was known for her shy demeanor and sweet disposition.
Ebony was a very beautiful young woman. You would think she was a social butterfly, but she was really quiet and demure.
The 26-year-old loved her children with all her heart.
She was an awesome mom, always making sure her kids had everything that they needed.
Though family was her first priority, her church presence was a close second.
Ebony was involved in the community. She was involved with her church.
Ebony Andrews appeared to be the average all-American good girl.
After the breakup with her children's father, Ebony jumped headfirst into her career.
She had a very exciting job in the food industry. It allowed her to travel a lot of places.
She had family to help her with the kids while she was gone for work.
She was able to support herself. She was living on her own. She was very optimistic about her future and where she was going in life.
Ebony seemed to have everything, but her heart longed for a partner.
She had an apartment, a good job. The only thing that was missing was a man.
Then one night in 2010, it seemed like her prayers had been answered when she met 32-year-old charmer Joseph Cologne.
He spotted her and went right up to introduce himself.
He had this demeanor that demanded attention.
Ebony was immediately intrigued.
He said he was an entrepreneur that owned his own business.
It seemed like he had a lot going for him.
He was easy to talk to. It was an excitement that she hadn't felt in a long time.
For her, it seemed like she finally found this guy that checked off all her boxes.
Within months, the pair was inseparable.
Joseph would tell her that he was the man for her, and he would prove it in his actions.
He came in strong, giving her all the attention she was looking for. She did start imagining the future for them.
Joseph even started attending church with Ebony.
She was so happy to find a man that she could share a spiritual connection with.
Ebony was enamored with him, and he was enamored with her as well.
In addition to the spiritual connection, the physical connection between the two was undeniable.
Joseph Cologne swept Ebony off her feet.
It was just something about him that she couldn't resist, even if she tried.
In Joseph's arms, she felt safe. She could really let her guard down and be vulnerable, and that meant the world to her.
With a great job, loving children, a good church, and a man by her side, Ebony had the world at her fingertips. But little did she know that her dream man had a dark secret and would eventually get her into a world of trouble that she never imagined possible. July 31st, 2010. As police cordon off the crime scene of a double homicide in Beaumont, Texas, detectives arrive at the home. They begin their investigation by speaking to the surviving victim, Ronald Woods.
His tensions were heightened. He had run away from gunfire. He seemed a little agitated and upset.
Ronald identifies the two victims as his fiancée, 42-year-old Mary Goodman, and Mary's daughter, Brianna.
Brianna was a great kid, 16, never really got in any trouble.
Mary was a hard worker, and she did everything she could to provide for her daughter. She was also about to embark on a new chapter with the love of her life.
Ronald is in shock, but he tells police he thinks he knows who the shooter is.
His fiancée was going to be a witness in an armed robbery case, and he believed the shooter was connected to that.
With a solid lead, detectives will soon uncover the identity of their gunman and a woman hell-bent on making sure he's never caught.
She kind of just continued down this road of, I'm gonna just have his back no matter what.
Single mother Ebony Andrews had fallen hard for charming 32-year-old entrepreneur Joseph Cologne.
Joseph seemed like he had all the qualities Ebony was looking for in a man.
He was handsome, hardworking. He treated Ebony like a princess. She was head over heels for him.
But Ebony would soon learn that Joseph was harboring a dark secret, one that could end up turning her entire life upside down. July 31st, 2010. Detectives are investigating the double homicide of Mary Goodman and her daughter, Brianna.
Mary was found in the doorway of her home, and they found her daughter in the backyard.
You had two people that were shot multiple times, and it looks like it was an execution-style kill.
As police canvass the neighborhood for the shooter, detectives speak to surviving witness and Mary's fiancé, Ronald Woods.
He was very upset, distraught, crying.
Ronald Woods lost his family in just a matter of seconds.
Fortunately, Ronald is able to give detectives a solid lead.
He said Mary was set to be a witness in the upcoming armed robbery case, and he believed that the shooter was the man she was going to testify against.
Ronald says he doesn't know the man's name, but he's confident in his accusation. According to Ronald, the man first approached them when he was getting ready to leave for work that morning.
Ronald said he was leaving for work at 7:30 a.m. and Mary was seeing him off.
A man walked up. He describes him as 5'8", 180, 190 pounds, dreads of some length.
He says he didn't immediately recognize the man, but it wasn't long before he realized who he was.
The man was clearly upset. He started going off on Mary.
He was shouting things like, "Who do you think you are? You can't do this to me."
Ronald says at first he was trying to defuse the situation. But then, the man pulled out a gun.
The man ordered Ronald and Mary inside at gunpoint.
Once inside, Ronald says he and Mary were terrified.
As he was getting agitated, Mary tried to calm him down.
Just then, Mary's 16-year-old daughter came into the living room, startling the gunman.
Without warning, the suspect begins firing in the direction of Mary's daughter.
Ronald says they all ran for their lives.
Ronald pushed Mary towards the front door, told her to run, and then he took off running towards the back of the house.
He was trying to save Brianna.
He and Brianna, they make their way out to the backyard and run.
Ronald thought Brianna was right behind him, but when he turned back, she was gone.
He knew he needed to find help immediately.
That's when he spotted the officer up the street and flagged him down.
It was obvious he was heartbroken. He had tried to protect the two women, but was unsuccessful.
A quick call to the station confirms Ronald's claim that Mary had been a witness in a pending case. And the name of the man she is set to testify against is 32-year-old Joseph Cologne.
Mary had actually given police a statement against Joe Cologne, identifying him as a perpetrator in a robbery that had gone down several weeks prior.
The evidence appeared that this was retaliation for her cooperating with law enforcement.
Not only that, but Joseph Cologne is no stranger to police.
They find out he has an extensive criminal history.
He was known to deal with drugs in the area.
Detectives show Ronald a picture of Joseph Cologne.
He was able to identify Joseph Cologne as the shooter.
Authorities now have a positive ID on the man who murdered Mary and Brianna Goodman.
In Texas, murdering a witness is a capital offense, and so police issue a capital murder warrant for Joseph Cologne.
They consider Joseph to be armed and dangerous, and he's on the loose in Beaumont.
With the city searching for Joseph Cologne, detectives head back to the station.
The first things that they tried to do was to track where he was using cell phone triangulation.
But when detectives get their hands on Joseph's phone records, it appears the fugitive turned his phone off shortly after the murder. However, detectives hone in on one number that pops up regularly on Joseph's call log.
The number is listed as Ebony Andrews.
Checking the criminal database for Ebony Andrews, they drew a blank.
She had no criminal record, no prior offenses.
Looking over Ebony's social media page, it seems she was a loving mom and active in her church community. Detectives wonder how she's connected to their fugitive.
They decide to give her a call and see what she can tell them about Joseph.
When detectives get Ebony on the phone, she tells them Joseph is her boyfriend. Ebony seems very surprised by their call.
They wondered if she even knew about his criminal history and drug dealings.
Detectives decide to keep things vague for now and don't tell Ebony Joseph is wanted for murder. They ask her if she can point them to her boyfriend's whereabouts.
Ebony told police that she didn't know where he was.
She says she's been busy traveling to Louisiana for work and that she hasn't spoken to him since she left town a few days ago.
However, Ebony says she wants to help in any way she can and agrees to come back to Beaumont for a formal interview. But soon, detectives will discover this sweet, God-fearing young woman isn't as forthcoming as she seems.
When she got the call, her reaction was more of a desire to protect her man.
She was completely under his spell.
July 2010. Beaumont police are investigating the double homicide of 42-year-old Mary Goodman and her daughter, 16-year-old Brianna.
This whole incident is especially tragic. We've lost the life of a mother and a teenage girl.
It was even more egregious because they were in their home, in the place where they felt safe, and it was at a time where they were most vulnerable.
Detectives have issued an arrest warrant for 32-year-old Joseph Colon.
Mary's fiance identified Joseph Colon as the shooter.
Ronald Woods tells the police that his fiance had recently identified Joe Colon as being involved in an aggravated robbery, and that he believed the shootings were retaliation.
Mary Goodman and her daughter Brianna were only targeted because she was trying to do the right thing.
After finding her number in Joseph's call logs, detectives asked Joseph's girlfriend, Ebony Andrews, to come to the station for a formal interview.
She seems very uncomfortable. You can tell she's not used to being in a police station.
Detectives ask Ebony if she's aware of her boyfriend's criminal lifestyle. To their surprise, Ebony says yes.
She says when she first met Joseph, he told her he was an entrepreneur. He kept it pretty vague, but eventually he opened up to her and told her what he really did for a living.
He admitted to her about the drug dealing.
Ebony admits Joseph's line of work made her feel uncomfortable, but she still loved him and thought she could change him.
Despite those red flags that she might have seen, she decided, I'm just going to give this my all. I can change him. I can make him a better man. He's on a better path now.
Ebony was smitten with Joseph. She was really thinking, maybe I can rub off on him and make him a good boy.
She probably felt like she could love him out of this situation.
Then, detectives reveal that Joseph is wanted in connection with a double homicide. Ebony seems shocked.
Ebony swears Joseph would never harm anyone, let alone kill him. She thought that it was just a mistake.
She seemed completely entranced by this guy.
Detectives ask Ebony where Joseph is now, but Ebony echoes her earlier claim.
She tells them she last talked to Joseph on the night she left for New Orleans, a few days before the murder.
She said she knows nothing about the shooting or murders, but will be in touch with him if she hears anything from Joe.
Even though Ebony appears forthcoming, detectives sense she's hiding something.
It seemed odd for her to not keep in contact with Joseph, even if she had been out of town for work.
But with no evidence to back up their suspicions, they let Ebony go.
At this point, the police still couldn't connect the two to the crime.
In the meantime, detectives subpoena Ebony's cell phone records. As they wait for the approval, they get word that Joseph Colon may have been caught on camera fleeing the crime scene.
Police secure a surveillance video from the university near the crime scene.
They ultimately were able to pull videotapes from the dorm that shot out to the street that surrounds that neighborhood where the murder occurred.
Detectives easily identified Joseph Cologne. And it seems Joseph was not alone.
They did notice a white car coming in and out of the frames right around the time that the crime happened.
Joseph Cologne gets into the passenger seat, and then that vehicle leaves.
Detectives wonder if Joseph's squeaky clean girlfriend could be his accomplice.
Authorities do some digging, and they realize that there's a white vehicle registered to Ebony Andrews, and it looks very similar to that white vehicle in the video.
To investigators, looks like Ebony Andrews could have been the getaway driver for her boyfriend.
When detectives receive Ebony's phone records, they only bolster that theory.
The cell phone data indicates that both Joseph and Ebony's phones were together in the same place at the times of the murder.
Ebony wasn't being honest when she told the police that she had been out of town this whole time.
Ebony's phone records also suggest she's now in Houston, just 85 miles away. The couple appears to be on the run.
Police are pursuing both Ebony Andrews and Joseph Cologne in connection with the double homicide.
Authorities know that they need to find this couple, and they need to find them fast.
Soon, police will close in on Joseph Cologne and his girlfriend. But he's not going down easily.
They had him surrounded, and he started threatening the cops.
July 2010. Beaumont, Texas police are on the hunt for 32-year-old Joseph Cologne. Detectives believe Joseph to be on the run after killing mother and daughter Mary and Brianna Goodman.
He shot them to try to silence Mary so that she wouldn't testify against him in an unrelated robbery case.
Brianna had nothing to do with this. The only thing she had to do with it was that she was Mary's daughter.
Detectives have discovered that Joseph's girlfriend, single mother Ebony Andrews, may have been involved.
Her car was seen on surveillance video picking him up after the murders.
It also appears after lying to police, Ebony went on the run with her man.
Her cell phone data was able to show where they were going.
They believe they were in Houston, which is about 85 miles from Beaumont.
Police were able to put out information about Joseph and Ebony and a description of the vehicle in hopes that someone would see it and be able to help locate them.
On August 11th, detectives get word on the couple's whereabouts. Ebony's car was spotted at a hotel in Houston.
Police locate the hotel and locate their room, and then they move in for an arrest.
They wait until Ebony is outside the room before they announce themselves.
She doesn't see the police. She casually strolls out the room, and she gets apprehended.
That's when Joseph realizes what's going on.
He had tried to barricade himself in the room. And even when they told him the room's surrounded, you're not going to get away, he threatened them.
They have no idea what Joseph was capable of at this point. They are concerned that the weapon is still with him and he's dangerous.
It's an intense situation. They don't know if he still has the gun. They do know he's already killed 2 people.
With no choice, detectives burst into the room.
At that point, Joseph knows it's over.
He was arrested and taken into custody.
Both Joseph and Ebony were charged with capital murder, and they faced the death penalty if convicted of that crime.
It seems the couple had finally been stopped, and they left no shortage of evidence behind.
Authorities were able to take samples from Ebony's car, from the passenger's floor and the door handle, and it appeared to be blood.
When lab results came back, it indicated that the blood found belonged to Mary and Brianna Goodman.
Detectives also recover the gun.
They found it stashed away in some nearby brush.
The gun found outside was indeed a match to the bullets found at the crime scene.
Joseph and Ebony are transported back to Beaumont. Detectives hope the overwhelming evidence against the couple will lead to a speedy confession. They try their hand at Joseph first.
Joseph Colon was very smug, just really came across as cocky and confident.
Joseph maintained his innocence and was not talking to the police.
Detectives confront Joseph with the surveillance video, the blood evidence recovered from the vehicle, and the gun, all to no avail.
Joseph Colon requested a lawyer.
That shuts down that avenue of investigation for law enforcement.
Detectives hope they'll have better luck with Ebony.
Since Joseph wouldn't talk to him, police were hopeful that Ebony would help them put together the final pieces of their investigation.
However, detectives will soon discover that this church-going woman's faithfulness to her man is hard to shake.
She had already shown willingness to lie for him before.
Ebony can't turn back. She's a ride-or-die chick. She's made this commitment to him to be by his side no matter what.
August 2010. Detectives are speaking with 26-year-old Ebony Andrews for her connection to the murders of Mary and Brianna Goodman.
They believe Ebony's boyfriend, Joseph Colon, pulled the trigger, and Ebony was the getaway driver.
The video surveillance shows Joe and Ebony leaving the crime scene in Ebony's car.
Cell phone data was also able to show that she was with Joseph minutes after the murder, despite Ebony saying she wasn't.
With her boyfriend refusing to speak, detectives press Ebony hard for the truth.
She's trying to hide it, but you can tell she's clearly wrestling with her conscience about something.
Detectives lay out the charges she faces for her part in the crimes.
She can actually get the death penalty if the capital murder charge sticks.
Authorities hope the charges would maybe make Ebony more willing to testify than withhold information like Joseph.
The police knew Joseph was the mastermind. They knew he's the shooter. He is the one they're after.
As the God-fearing young mother realizes how much trouble she's in, she knows what she has to do.
Ebony was realistic about what's going to happen next. They know I wasn't in New Orleans. They know I was with Joseph the whole time. Ebony had a moment of clarity where she's like, what did I get myself into?
She's thinking, how did I allow this person to pull me into a situation like this?
At this point, she breaks down and tells police everything.
She's got to be scared of losing her kids. She wants to come clean and do the right thing.
According to Ebony, she really did think she could change Joseph and get him on a better path.
By the time he told her about the drug dealing, she was so in love with him that she just didn't want to abandon their relationship.
He told her he could change, and she believed him.
Ebony says for a while, it seemed like Joseph was really making progress.
He continued to attend church with her regularly.
He was going through the motions, doing whatever he had to do to make himself look like a man of God in her eyes.
Ebony says on the morning of July 31st, she thought she was giving Joseph a ride to a friend's house to pick up a stereo.
When they arrived at the house, he told her to stay in the car because it was just going to be a few minutes.
Ebony explains she waited for a while, even texting Joseph. But with no response, she became restless and decided to drive around the block until she heard from him. Then suddenly, Ebony heard gunshots.
Seconds later, she saw Joseph run out into the street.
Ebony's confused because she dropped him off at a different house, but he was coming from a different direction.
Ebony says Joseph quickly got into the passenger side of the car. And that's when she noticed the blood.
He had blood on his clothing, he had a gun in his hand. She knew something bad had happened.
But Ebony claims she had no idea what Joseph had actually done.
She didn't know. He went down the street to where Mary Goodman lived, and that's when he shot Mary and Brianna.
I don't think Ebony understood the gravity of what was about to transpire.
He sweet-talked his way into getting her to be like, everything is going to be okay.
Ebony says Joseph didn't divulge any additional details to her. He just told her to drive, and that's what she did.
She arranged for her children to stay with family, and then she took off with Joseph to Houston.
She put not only her faith, but her entire life on hold for this guy.
Ebony admits she loved Joseph, and she didn't want him to get caught.
She didn't want him to get any trouble by using his credit cards, so she paid for the hotel.
Ebony's actions of getting Joseph a room was proof that she's committed to him. And she would do anything for him at all costs.
At this point, it was, I got to do whatever I can for my man.
When Ebony got the call from detectives later that day, she was nervous. But Joseph saw an opportunity.
He told her to go back to Beaumont and speak to them and throw them off his trail. And that's exactly what she did.
Then she went back to Houston to report to Joseph.
Ebony was this good Christian woman, but this guy had such a hold on her, she was ready to throw her Christian morals out the window for him.
Even if Ebony didn't know Joseph was going to kill Mary and Brianna that day, detectives still suspect Joseph must have told her the truth about what happened while they were on the run. And that meant she had been knowingly harboring a dangerous fugitive.
It seems like she had to know about the murders. That's why she lied to the police when he spoke to her before.
Now that Ebony is facing the same capital murder charges as Joseph, will she have to take the fall for what happened, even though he pulled the trigger?
Ebony lied to police for a man. She helped her man flee a crime scene. She then continued to help him remain at large with authorities. She almost helped him get away with murder.
August 2010. Ebony Andrews and her boyfriend, Joseph Colon, have been charged with the capital murders of Mary and Brianna Goodman.
Ebony could potentially go down for a murder she didn't commit, all because she helped him evade police after the fact.
Under current Texas law, there really isn't an accessory charge. So in cases like this, both people are charged with capital murder, even if only one of them actually pulled the trigger.
Ebony spends 5 long years behind bars, waiting for trial.
One of the things that made this case take so long is DNA. In a normal murder case, the detectives have some discretion about, well, we're only going to test this blood that was found at this scene. In a capital case, you got to test everything.
But in January of 2016, Ebony Andrews gets some good news.
Ultimately, her family and church family raised the money to get to the bondsman so that she could be at least out on house arrest.
She was released from jail with a GPS monitor attached, just to make sure that she doesn't take off again.
She was able to see her children again outside of the prison walls and to get to hold them again.
Just over a year later, in April of 2017, Joseph Cologne's trial gets underway. The prosecution must rely on evidence alone, as Ebony chooses not to testify.
Ebony Andrews did not appear as a witness for the state against Joseph.
If she testified against him, we were concerned for her safety. We think she was taken advantage of by Cologne.
The prosecution contends that Joseph killed Mary and Brianna Goodman in cold blood to prevent Mary from testifying against him for the robbery he committed 5 weeks earlier.
He shot Mary in the torso as she fled for safety towards the door, and then he shot her one last time in the head.
He then catches up with Brianna in the backyard as she's trying to get away and shoots her once in the head.
After all was said and done, Joseph knew he could count on Ebony to help him evade police. And that's exactly what they did.
After a 9-day trial, the jury finds Joseph Cologne guilty of capital murder.
Joseph was sentenced to death by lethal injection, and he's still fighting that in appeals court today.
To everyone's surprise, the prosecution ultimately decides to drop all charges against Ebony.
All charges were dropped against Ebony because of insufficient evidence.
Either A, she didn't know that that's what Joseph was going there to do, or B, she was the worst getaway driver ever, because you can't circle the block in a murder. Somebody's going to come out of the house, and they're going to need you to be where you're supposed to be.
You can't convict someone of capital murder if you can't prove that they knew the murder was going to happen before it actually took place.
They could have charged her with lesser charges for lying to the police, but Ebony had already been in jail for 5 years. They secured the conviction for Joseph. Just seemed like a waste at this point.
For the family members of the victims, Ebony's release was one of mixed reactions.
2 people are dead, lives are lost, and she nearly helped their killer go free.
Mary Goodman did the right thing. And because of it, it cost her and her daughter her life. And that's just horrible.
However, many in the Beaumont community rejoiced in the church-loving mother's freedom.
Ultimately, justice was served, I think, because she's not being charged with a crime that she didn't commit.
When Ebony Andrews fell for Joseph Cologne, she never could have imagined what her man was really capable of.
He manipulated her into thinking that he was a man of God and getting his life together, when in reality, he was a monster. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Ebony fell for a man who wasn't being honest with her, and once she actually knew who he was, she was already so in love with him that she couldn't bear to leave him.
Ebony Andrews essentially became prey to Joseph Cologne. She grew up in the church. She was looking for love and stability. However, street smart, slick Joseph Cologne had ulterior motives, and unfortunately for Ebony, it almost cost her freedom.
Loving someone with all your heart can allow you to experience life's greatest blessings. But when that bright light of goodness becomes clouded by a wicked storm, it's time to pray for clarity and hope for redemption before you end up paying